So welcome to the Flower of Life module. We're drawing the various iterations of the flower of life, and we're going to start with a reminder about the seed of life. So we want to start on our 11 by 14 paper. Landscape orientation, I feel, works best with the geometry. And you want to use an inch width for your compass. So a 1-inch radius, which will give us a 2-inch circle. I believe that keeps us on the page. If you want to find the precise center of the page, that's great. Take the time to do that. You might want to pause me because I always eyeball it. I just approximate the center of the page. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, especially with big shapes like this. So you might be wise to get as close as you can to the center of the page. And once you've got that, go ahead and draw your seed. Hopefully this is a great reminder of the progression. Starting with the second circle, I highly recommend following the orientation that I laid out because it helps with the progression, which means putting the second compass point here at the bottom of the first circle. So compass point goes here, and that gives you the second circle down below, because what that's going to give you is this vertical orientation of the seed and of the entire flower. And it's just easier to follow the progression. I find this is the orientation that I prefer. If you start on the horizon, if you put your compass point on either of the horizons of the first circle, then you get a horizontal orientation to your flower. Just so you know, I'm saying all of that as you're drawing the seed, so that I'm just staying with you in the drawing process and giving you the little highlights and pieces of information and insider tips about drawing the geometry, as well as the levels of consciousness that you can be tapping into with simply drawing the seed. So hopefully you've got your 7 circles here, and it does get easier with practice, so I really encourage you to keep going. I want to invite you here to take a breath into this basic shape. There is so much harmony. There is so much happening when you're drawing this simple shape. You're literally entraining the hemispheres of your brain into a state of alignment. You are creating an altered state of consciousness that allows higher intelligence. It allows you to connect with your own wisdom. You're occupying that little chatty part of your brain by drawing circles, and you're also aligning your brain. And then with both of those processes, you're more able to receive the things that you know within yourself that we're a little bit fragmented from and distracted from. So there's just so many layers. So just pause with this shape and acknowledge a little bit, right? Acknowledge the geometry and the potency of it. There's so much happening here. I get so excited. So now what we're going to do, it's really just a series of adding circles. So I'm going to pause the drawing for a second for an insider tip about precision. So I want to encourage you to get into a good habit from the start that will help the geometry be more precise, less frustrating, and more satisfying. So when you're drawing your circle, go ahead and give a circle. Now, the tendency here is to lift up the compass and put it on the next one, right? Just kind of, oh, I'll get as close as I can. Actually, what I find to get the most precise is I'll literally change up my grip. I'll go and pinpoint with more accuracy, and then I'll go and pick up the compass again and do my next circle. And I actually shift my grip with every positioning, and I'm telling you, it gets you more precise geometry. Go ahead and fly by the wind and pick it up and put it down. Try it both ways, you'll see. So we're going for this shape, which is simply another round of circles. And what I do is I start right here with this intersection, right? And I put my compass here, and then the next circle happens. And basically, just start with that. And then with every circle you draw, it shows you where the next compass point goes, because it naturally intersects with a circle that's already existing. And it will show you every time where to put the compass. The trick with the flower of life is just go for it. It's just one circle after another, and it's really about practice, and it really is about a sense of mindfulness, because once you get the feeling of the repetitive pattern of the circles, you can on some level let go a little bit of the focusing, concentrating mind and get more into the experiencing mind. Take a nice deep breath with a few circles, tune into the physicality of your process, step back from the mental piece once you get the hang of it, right? So we're seeing this beautiful hexagonal structure emerge, this six-sided geometry, and this is 2 rings of the flower of life. This pattern right here can be called the flower of life. We're also going to draw a 3rd ring of circles as well as a 4th ring of circles, right? So it can get really expansive. But you can stop here, and this is considered one iteration. Okay, so here is a fork in the road. What I'm going to show you next is how to draw the zona pellucida that goes around the shape. I recommend just watching how it would be made, but not actually drawing the zona pellucida, right? Because I want you to be able to go on to the fully expressed flower of life. So leave the shape as is. Watch me through the next 2 steps of drawing the zona pellucida, but then we're going to get into drawing a 3rd ring of circles. And the zona pellucida takes that away from the larger shape, right? It cuts it off. So just watch the next progression, and then we'll get back into drawing rings of circles. And the way you do that is by opening your compass to the perimeter of the hexagonal axis, right? So you've got 3 different lines that bisect the shape. It's a 6-sided shape, so 3 different bisecting segments, each being the most extended point of the hexagon, right? So you open the compass, put the compass point in the center, open to the pencil, aligns with both this external point as well as all 6 external points of the hexagon. So you can kind of take the compass and check the different 6 points, see that it's lining up, get as close as possible. Again, we're not shooting for precision here yet, but this is the way that you get the zona pellucida. And what you would do is draw 1 line and then just open the compass a tiny bit and draw the 2nd line. So this is the 2nd iteration of the flower of life, right? You've got 2 rings of circles, and then you've got 2 lines creating the membrane that contains the intelligence, right? So if you're translating this geometry as an intelligence, in just these 2 rings of circles, you've got what? You've got the star tetrahedron, you've got the cube octahedron, which holds the still point of all creation. So there's so much in here, and yet we're going to open it up a little bit more. So here we are back with the seed of life, and then a 2nd ring of circles around that. And we're going to get right into the 3rd ring of circles. So same thing, just pick a point to start and put your compass down. Start up with the circles. So a couple phenomenon that happen when you're drawing the flower of life to keep an eye out for. Start with your process of 1 circle and then the next, and don't stop to look at the shape. Like, just keep going, because in the early stages, and actually almost the whole way, if you stop, you are likely to lose your place, and it will look like you're doing it wrong, but you might actually be doing it right. Just don't stop. Just keep strong attention towards the next intersection point of each circle. And ultimately, you will stay with the hexagonal structure. It is easy to get lost, and you might have to really stop. I understand that part. But as a general principle, if you stop, it will look wonky. Okay, it's just duly noted. Another thing that starts to happen, and I mentioned this before, is that any imperfections, meaning those little triangles between where the petals match up or don't match up, if they're small around the seed, if you have them in the seed, they get exponentially big by this ring for sure. And then by the fourth ring, those misalignments start to make the whole shape hard to follow. So that's why the tip for trying to go for precision at the beginning is because when you get off early, it just gets off and more off and more off. So something to watch for with this shape. Also, there is a fascinating phenomenon, and I'm going to go into that in the next slide that has the 4 rings of circles on it. So I'm going to go ahead and forward the slide. So if you don't have this set of circles done yet, just go ahead and pause me until you're ready for the next slide. So here we have the seed of life hidden in there, plus a second ring of circles, and a third ring of circles, and a fourth. And the invitation early on was to see if you can get into the flow of the pattern of making circles and release a little bit of that linear focus, kind of step back, maybe take a breath or two, and feel more into the process. Feel into the flow of that repetitive motion as you go around. See if you can tap that contemplative exploration of patterning, where the activity becomes so rote and routine that you can free up your consciousness and begin to open to your subtle sensory system, to the part of you that is preoccupied every day. You can take a step back as you're drawing these simple circles, right? And practice does make perfect. It is unlikely that you have a seriously perfect shape going on the first time you've drawn it. So there's one phenomenon that I find fascinating that I want you to keep an eye out for when you're finished with this round of circles. Pretty much without fail, when everyone's first learning to draw the flower of life, without fail, one half of the flower of life will be sort of tight in the precision, and the other half will look very different, a little bit wonky and a little bit imprecise. And somehow I believe that this reflects our dominant and non-dominant hemispheres of the brain. I can't prove it. I have not hooked myself up to an EEG to somehow map the connection between the geometry and my brain. But take a look once you've done with your shape, and you will see. I would almost guarantee it. Just get in touch with me if you don't see it. There would be one half that is uniform in one way, and the other half of the shape is uniform in another way. So keep an eye out for that. And now we are going to get into finding the zona pellucida from this vantage point, right? So this time we're actually going to draw it. So I'll walk you through that step. The way that you find the coordinates for the membrane from this angle is to look for these 7 circles, only linearly aligned, not embedded with each other like the seed. So you can darken them in if you want, or you can just visually find them and maybe make little notes here. Maybe once you find the external center points, then you want to put your compass down in the center and open the compass to, like you saw before, to the external hexagonal point, right? And then you would draw from there. You're going to draw a single line, not the 2 like before, it's just the single one, right? So that's how you find the measurements of the 7 internal circles, right? So once you've got your line, this is the sad part. You want to go ahead and erase everything outside of the circle, which is just, I don't like it. That's why I show you the 2 different ways to get in. But here we go. It's cool this way, but it also, erasing something that you've put so much work into always feels a little jarring for my system. So implied in this shape, right, is that the pattern can just infinitely repeat. So one of the things that I like to say to people when they're doing the class is, if you get the hankering to just keep going with this pattern, just keep going and fill the page. And it is so cool. You saw some of the art that did that. You know, you just at some point you just can't be stopped, and you got to keep going, and the pattern will go there with you. So once you've got the outside erased and you've got your single circle, you want to go ahead and open the compass up tiny little millimeter and make a second circle. Right, so here you've got the implications, you've got the echo of what we saw before with the zona, but you've got a lot more content in there and a lot more intelligence, right? So it's pretty packed in there, so we're going to have to do a little bit more erasing. So just keep an eye on this small area that needs to be erased. It's right here between this petal boundary, right, and the membrane wall that we just drew. So it's these segments of circle bits, right, on all 6 sides. You just do the same thing, and you make this clear open space in here, right, which gives you the obvious hexagon, right? And this is the place where I highly recommend getting small, fine-tipped erasers. It makes things like this really easy. And once you've got all your pencil bits erased, there you have it. This is the full expression of the flower of life. Hope you enjoy the flower of life. Hope you enjoy coloring in whatever meditation processes you plan to do with your shape. I do highly recommend taking a picture of it. Number 1, it's super cool to show everybody. Number 2, it has a totally different perspective when you take a picture. It's very cool. So thank you, good job, and we'll see you at the vector equilibrium.